Hey audiophiles, this is Sky-Fi Audio coming at you from Glen Rock, New Jersey. Today we've got one of our favorite amplifiers from the 90s. It's an Audio Research VT100, which came in 3 variations over its lifespan. We like this amplifier for a bunch of reasons, and the public agrees because it was one of the best-selling amplifiers from Audio Research for quite a long time. As I mentioned, they came in 3 versions, and the first thing to note is its form factor. This is a standard chassis form factor. At the time, this would have competed with Macintosh MC275, which would have been more of like a sled design, which is a bit awkward to fit into a rack or a stereo system. So the Audio Research upped the power from the 275 to 100 watts per channel, while the MC275, its biggest competitor, would have been about 75 watts per channel, give or take. The VT100 ran for a bunch of years in 3 iterations, and in this video, I'll go through the different versions and what the changes were and what to look out for when picking one of these. The first thing we can talk about in terms of ergonomics is this generous size. For a 100-watt tube amplifier, it's an ample case. There's lots of room, great ventilation, incredibly easy to work on, and reliable because of that. We tend to find amplifiers that are packed real tight to be a lot less reliable for obvious reasons, interference, inability to ventilate the tubes, etc., etc. So when Audio Research decided to pack this into a single chassis, they paid a lot of attention to the orientation of the tubes, and they used convection cooling for a lot of its cooling. In earlier versions, they changed, they went from convection cooling and then they added fans to kind of increase its cooling capacity as the power supply size went up. But let's talk about a little bit about where it came from. So this would have been introduced in the mid-90s, about 1996. And it ran for probably 10 years. Version 2 came out in 1998, and soon to follow that, version 3, which is much, much different than that. In terms of design circuitry, this is a Class A-B differential circuit design. It uses 2 matched pairs of 6550s per channel, so that's a total of 4 6550s per side. The driver stage is made up of, at least in versions 1 and 2, is made out of a 6992 twin triodes per side. So 4 of the smaller twin triode tubes per side, and I'll point those out in a bit. Power supply is fully regulated and it's dual mono, so everything except for the main power transformer is independent on the left and right channels, and I'll point that out as well in a bit. So let's look at on the inside to sort of see why we like this amplifier. So look at that cavernous interior, quite a bit, and you wonder, hey, where's all this stuff? Well, Audio Research was super careful, and they mounted the left and right channels vertically on the left-hand side of the chassis, and you can imagine how good that is in terms of interference. They're almost 14 inches apart from each other, which is pretty remarkable for a stereo amplifier. There's no better layout to get channel separation than this. So the tubes aren't installed. We've only installed 2 tubes just to show you what the layout is. We typically ship the amplifiers in this sort of configuration, these foam inserts slotted right here in the middle, which is kind of neat. It gives us a really nice shipping package for you. So this is how they usually ship, with the tubes inside stacked like this. So looking at the inside, let's look at the left channel. For example, here is the placement for the 4 output tubes, the dual pairs that we talked about of the 6550s. And then just below here where you see the smaller tube, that's the driver stage. And there would have been 4 of those slotted, 1, 2, 3, and then 4th one over here. So let's take a look at the left channel and then the right channel. Here's a better look at the power board without any tubes in it. You can see super high quality components. These are WEMA capacitors, precision resistors throughout. These blue guys are of a much tighter tolerance. On the back of the chassis, we'll find the output transformers. So this here is the input transformer, which is shared for the two channels. So the voltage comes into here, and then it splits and it feeds both left and right channels. And then each left and right channel has its corresponding output transformer, which then goes to the speakers. All right, so let's talk about some of the changes throughout the years. So the first version, the MK1, would have been very similar to this one. This happens to be an MK2. So the only difference between the MK1 and the MK2 is the addition of a fan for cooling. I guess they realized once it was out in the field for a few years that some people just weren't giving it enough ventilation. So to play it safe, they added an active fan here at the bottom. So you can see that the bottom plate is completely perforated, and so is the top plate. So air would come in from underneath the unit, blow through the tubes, cool the interior, and then exit through the top of the amplifier. So MK1 would not have had that. And then the other thing is they upped the size of the power supply. They went from 270 joules to 540 joules. So that's almost twice as much on the inputs of the power supply. MK3 later changed a lot of things. The MK3 is a much different amplifier. Same chassis, same design and architecture, but they took the driver boards and the driver circuitry from their VT100 monoblocks and then trickled it down to the VT100. So instead of using the 6922 on the driver's side, they switched over to a 6H30 tube. So much different design, and they did add drivers or FETs in the driver stage as well. They also changed the sort of way that you connect in the back. Instead of using shorting plugs for the balance cable, they switched to, they actually added a switch so you could go from single-ended to balanced. Speaking of, let's take a look at the back, show you what I mean. So on the MK3 version, instead of finding these shorting clips here, see these little copper shorting clips, these are inserted when you want to use the single-ended connection. And then if you want to use the balance connection, you obviously pull these out. I guess people were losing these, and they were a bit of a nuisance for audio research to have to keep sending replacements. So at some point in the MK3 version, they added a switch so you could just flip it and eliminate essentially the jumpers. Same layout. They did add 12-volt triggers in the MK3 version, which is a nice addition if you wanted to turn the amplifier on and off from your preamp. You would connect a 12-volt trigger cable between the two. Same nice machined brass output binding post with 4 and 8 ohm taps and IC connectors. So not much changed in version 1 to version 2, and then version 3 added the things I just went over, the switch and the 12-volt triggers. So at 100 watts, it's a really nice place to be in terms of a tube amplifier. It can pretty much power a lot of speakers, except for maybe some planers or some amplifiers that may be a little less efficient. So I would think this would do a really great job with speakers with an efficiency of like 89 dB or above. 100 watts is a lot more than people think in terms of output power. So it's a really nice place to be in terms of the power rating. You know, we find that amplifiers in the 40, 50, 60 watt range, you end up having to change them out as you change speakers. But at 100 watts per channel, this would do really well. It also is manageable. You know, it has these handles in the front that lets you move it around. It's about 65 pounds and it's evenly weighted, which is kind of nice. Some amplifiers have all the weight in the front and the back, and when you go to lift them, they're sort of really awkward and it's easy to drop them, but not this amplifier. We find it to be a pretty good, easy to move by one person rather than needing a couple of people to move. Looking at the chassis, we've got aluminum end plates and side plates. This is also anodized aluminum, so you won't find cheap sheet metal here. It's all really nice aluminum work. And then the embossed audio research logo into the front panel, which is also a symbol of audio research equipment from the 90s. Prior to that, they would just imprint or silk screen the name onto the equipment. In the front, very simple operation. It's just a power switch here with an LED that corresponds to power being on. And it does have a decent warm-up time of about a minute before it gets up to operating speed. I think that covers it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel if you enjoy our videos. That'll keep us motivated to bring you more and more of them. And visit us at hifiaudio.com. We have hundreds and hundreds of vintage items that we go through carefully and make sure that they're working before we release them out to the audiophile world. So that's www.hifiaudio.com. Thanks for watching.